She's an award-winning writer, a hunting guide, archery and rifle instructor, keynote speaker, and all-around outdoors woman who encourages you to get outside, hunt, fish, shoot, and savor all that life has to offer. And now, here's your host, Mia Anstine.
Well, hey, hi, hello, guys. Welcome to the Mac Outdoors podcast. Thanks for stopping in. If it's your first time here, then welcome to the show. We have a special episode. As always, I'm sure they're all special. But today I have a guest who is going to talk to us a little bit about gunsmithing. And if you are not a gun owner, I would love it if you messaged me and let me know your thoughts about firearms, why you don't have one, why do you listen to the show? Are you interested in learning more about firearms, or where is your journey going? I would love to hear about that. You can email me. The email address is contact@miaanstine.com, or you can reach out to me on social media. You can either message Mac Outdoors or Mia Anstine. We are on most social media outlets. We will talk a little bit about social media today because social media can be fun, and my guest has had some experience, positive and negative, on social media. So we're going to talk about that. But also, I wanted to talk to you, especially if you're a new gun owner, there's some tips for you. If you're an experienced gun owner, there are a lot of tips for you. So without further ado, we've got a little bit of our marketing and affiliate information that helps pay for our show. So anything you do, it's no extra charge to you, but we do make a little bit of money from any purchases that you might make and use our affiliate codes. So without further ado, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoy this episode.
This summer, whether at the range or in the field, WSI Sports Hypertech bamboo tanks, tees, and leggings will have you covered. Visit WSISports.com to support the show and use the affiliate code MACO10 for 10% off your purchase. All products are proudly made in the USA. WSI is bringing back pride in American-made clothing. Again, that code is MACO10 for 10% off your order at WSISports.com.
Hey guys, are you looking for a stylish concealed carry shirt? Check out Tarn Cap Gear. With print-reducing patterns, concealed carry snaps, and minimal branding, Tarn Cap's cloak of invisibility is what you have been waiting for. Visit mia.limited/tarncap and use the code Anstine for 10% off your purchase. Again, that's mia.limited/tarncap and use code Anstine for 10% off your order. Well, for starters, I want to welcome you to the Mac Outdoors podcast. And I really try to share and educate and teach my listeners about a variety of things, mostly hunting and the outdoors, but I do share a lot of firearms stuff on here too. And since we were kind of virtually introduced, I wanted to share you with my audience as I learn about you. So for the listeners, would you introduce yourself and let us know what you do?
Sure. My name's Jason Schaller. I run a channel called the Rogue Banshee on YouTube. What's funny, a lot of people ask me, they go, what's a Rogue Banshee? And in my media kit, I have two pictures that shows what a Rogue Banshee is. I have a picture of my dog Rogue and a picture of my dog who passed away before we had Rogue, which was Banshee. And we swear that Rogue is Banshee reincarnated. So when we came up with the channel, we came up with the Rogue Banshee. I used to be an FFL. And towards the end of the FFL, I was doing Cerakote work and things like that. And, well, you got to learn how to disassemble and reassemble firearms. You know, I was already doing gunsmithing. So instead of charging somebody $50 to disassemble and reassemble their firearms, it's like easier just to do a video and show people. And that's really how the Rogue Banshee really started. And then, well, YouTube is just not gun friendly. So I had to kind of branch around all that stuff, and now we're kind of coming back to the gunsmithing stuff again. We're just doing it on other platforms.
And so what all platforms are your YouTube and your podcasts, and where all can we find you? I'm just going to start with that. I know we'll end with it too.
Sure. So the YouTube is where the primary content is, because that's where the most amount of people are. I have to some of the content's not there because it got taken down. Um, but other things are still out there. And then there's some of the newer content is cut for the YouTube policies. But I also post out to Rumble, and it also goes out to Odyssey as well. And then I also have my webpage, which I hit the delete button. I hated my webpage so much, I just hit the delete button. I'm just redoing the entire thing from scratch. So you can always reach me on my webpage too, which is trb.fyi.
Yeah. Okay. And so with the gunsmithing, that kind of intrigued me because it seems like nothing's ever exactly perfect, but also like somebody like me, I kind of just get something from the box. I've got a Ruger box back here behind me, and it's like I want it to just shoot good out of the box. And so
Yeah.
when you started gunsmithing, were you just kind of tuning up stuff you already had, or how did you start gunsmithing?
So it's I actually so going back to my childhood, I was always the kid that just took everything apart and put it back together. I say that I would save Huffy millions of dollars because after I put my bike back together, I'd have these extra parts. Um, so I could have saved them millions of dollars of stuff that they just didn't need because, well, I lived through my childhood, so it must have been safe. But going forward through being an FFL, I grew up with guns. I started shooting when I was 7, and then, you know, as I started getting older and I went into competition shooting, I started learning deeper into the firearms, became an FFL later on, and then I started working on other people's guns. And that's really just how it started, was working on other people's guns. I mean, I've always updated my firearms. I've done work on them, but then being licensed, now I get to really play with stuff. And I did go through a program. I started going through, this would be like early 2000s. I started going through a gunsmithing school to actually learn how to do this.
And so if I wanted to become a gunsmith, where do I find gunsmithing school?
You could Google it, and you'll
Oh,
probably be hit with SDI is probably the big one out there now. SDI didn't exist back when I took my gunsmithing classes. Um,
okay.
Gunsmithing classes in the early 2000s was either you went to, well, there's a really good one down there in Colorado by you. There's one in Arizona, and there's a couple on the East Coast. Other than that, it was like correspondence school, and it was really awful.
Awful. And so is that kind of your day job is being a gunsmith?
So no, my primary day job is actually cybersecurity. I've been in IT 28 years. Um, I went to a school. I originally grew up in Philadelphia, just outside Philadelphia, and the elementary school I went to started teaching us basic programming in 3rd grade. And I'm going to date myself here. That was 1980. I started learning how to program before the first space shuttle launch.
Wow. I that's something that I don't usually think of correlating with how old I am, but you're making me feel old. Too funny. Well, um, for the listeners, before we started recording, we talked a little bit about cybersecurity, and that's not really a topic that I want to cover with you guys because it's something that we need to pay attention to for sure. But it would probably take us days here, which we could spend days talking about guns too. But
Yes, we have.
that's what I would rather talk about. And with the guns and your gunsmithing stuff, is there any one particular gun that people bring to you, or what kind of stuff are you generally seeing?
So, so I'm no longer an FFL, so I no longer do that for
Okay.
profit. My FFL was tied to my house, and going through going through the issues we had here in Montana with the surge of outsiders moving in, it became problematic with having an FFL tied to your house. Uh, in 10 years of having a license, I had the sheriff's department out here 6 times,
Wow.
and 5 times in the last year of my license. And it just became a problem. Like, I'm not dealing with this anymore. I'm not putting my family at risk anymore with this stuff. I'm done. But back then, a lot of the stuff where it was gunsmithing, it was pushing sights on pistols, doing upgrades on barrels, and I've worked on a few like Remington 700 bolt actions, but mostly I did pistol work. And really, it's going to be odd that the pistol that I really got a lot of was the Beretta Cheetah, which is the Beretta 84 and 85. Somehow I became the Cheetah guy with this stuff. And the one thing about a Beretta, it doesn't matter whether it's the Cheetah or the 92 or M9. The problem with Berettas are there's been a million parts in there. And people just don't want to deal with them.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow I just started working on them. And I was actually buying Cheetahs on surplus market and rehabbing them and then reselling them. So that, for some reason, it was the Cheetah. And it's like the worst. I don't say it's the worst. It's not the worst performing disassembly, reassembly videos I have. It's just that's a very specific audience. But on videos, just looking on my YouTube analytics, I could tell you where everybody has a problem working on a Glock.
Okay.
Because that video is about 230,000 views right now. So and they're not hard, but there's some weirdness with a Glock that people just can't wrap their brain around.
Mm-hmm. And that's probably the internal mechanisms that they're looking at. What parts?
It's the trigger. It's the trigger housing in the rear. When you start working on changing out the connectors to change the pull weights and things like that, there's only a couple springs. I mean, the genius of a Glock is there's only so many parts in it. The thing is that if you don't know how to get this weird blade into the side of the housing, and it's just getting this right angle while you're trying to hold this spring in, that can be annoying, to say the least.
And so I'm thinking, you send people to YouTube all the time, like go learn on YouTube. But also I always warn people, like, be careful who you're watching because they may not really know what they're talking about. Whereas I feel like I could definitely send people to you to watch and feel confident that you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, see, when I started my YouTube video, when I started doing the disassembly and reassembly videos, the one thing about it was there's a lot of stuff out there, but it's really awful. It's like you have somebody like, okay, we're going to put together, this gun. And it's just it's out of focus. It's dark. And then they do, see, it's not easy. It's like, I have no idea what you did. What I did with my content is I actually slowed it down. And I put still images in there. It's like, we get these videos out there. Okay, we're going to put the sear into a 1911, and you have the average person looking at a pile of parts on their bench, going, "What's a sear?
What's the sear?" Yeah.
And I'll go. So now we're going to work with the sear, and I'll have a picture of the sear. So now you're like, okay, that's the sear, and now we're going to need the disconnector, and then I'll have a picture of the disconnector. So that way, as you're walking through, you have the parts. Because I designed the content for the everyday person. Mm-hmm. The everyday gun owner is not going to know this stuff. And I wanted it to be for everybody. Because I think everybody can work on their guns. And I want them to. And that's just how I designed it. And it takes a lot of time and editing. But ultimately, I love that people can take their gun apart, replace a part, and then put it back together, without having to take it and spend, gosh, I don't even remember. I think it's the last I checked is like $80 or $90 an hour at a gunsmith with a 3-month backlog.
Wow. Yeah, that's a ton. That makes me curious with my gunsmith. No wonder it takes them a while. Don't be upset at our gunsmiths is the moral of that story.
Well, and that's the problem with gunsmithing is that they have such a backlog because there's not a lot of people going into gunsmithing.
Mm.
There's more interest in welding. If we're talking about trades, welding and auto mechanics. The funny thing is that if you're doing that type of work, you could do gunsmithing. You have the mechanical knowledge to do it. It's really not that hard. It's scary.
Just scary. And what would make it scary? I mean, just I might lose a part, or maybe the gun's not going to function properly when you're done. What would be scary?
Well, we're always taught. I mean, the first rule of firearms is treat every firearm like it's loaded, right? So now we've trained everybody of this. This could be dangerous. This is a dangerous object, and now I'm going to be taking what I've been told is a dangerous object, and I'm going to do something I'm not trained to do on it.
Mm-hmm.
So you start having this stacking of fear on top of it. And then once you start doing it, you start understanding that firearms are really kind of the same. I mean, each manufacturer has a different way of doing something. But really, a sear is still a sear. A hammer is still a hammer. It's just understanding how the sear and the hammer works. If you have a striker-fired gun, there's still a sear in there. It just, the way the hammer works is now a striker. You still have something that's interfacing with either a hammer or a striker that is making it go off.
Yeah. And so I was going to say, for the listeners, will you explain to them what a sear is? Because I do have actually a lot of archery listeners too, and some that don't even have firearms. So
the sear, the basic concept of a sear, the sear controls the hammer. So when you push your trigger back, it interfaces with the sear, and if I think about a 1911, it's kind of like a half moon. And then your hammer is sitting on top of that. So what happens is it's basically a lever. And when you move it, the sear clears, and then the hammer falls. Yeah. That's really what it is it controls the firing. Everybody thinks the trigger controls it. It's actually the sear. The trigger interfaces with the sear, which interfaces with whatever method the firearm goes off with.
So if I have a firearm, like I have a lot of hunting rifles, and if I have my hunting rifle and I have trigger work done, what exactly are we working on internally there?
A lot of time when we're talking about trigger jobs, we're talking about smoothing off surfaces. So when something's made, I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be an engine in a car. They're making this stuff with machinery. Well, machinery's not exactly perfect. It still leaves grooves and marks and things like that. We're actually polishing off those surfaces. So that way we're taking the machinery, what's left behind the machinery where it couldn't make a perfect surface. And we're just smoothing that off. So where we have the trigger jobs is we're mostly working on that sear, where the trigger is interfacing on it, and where the sear interfaces with the hammer. We're just smoothing those off. Sometimes the angles are just not quite right where they meet. We're making them really match nice. So that way, when you get a nice smooth trigger pull, we can lighten trigger pulls up by changing springs out. There's all kinds of things that go into that, but mostly a trigger job is really the art of the industry.
Yeah. And I see that as an art, and I've had some gunsmiths that have just really improved a lot of firearms, which for me, smooth is everything. Like in all my firearms, if it's smooth, I love it. If it's clunky, it's like, okay, it still does the job. Like I get it, but I'm really a feel person. Even with my bow, I like the way it feels when I draw, how the cams move, and the way the vibrations after I shoot, stuff like that. So that's why I asked about triggers.
I remember, this is before I blew my shoulder out in high school. I used to shoot archery. Actually, I started off in archery before firearms. And, I started off on the traditional bare recurve bow, moving up, my first compound was a PSE. And then learning that, it's like, oh, I gotta pull this pull. And then that cam goes, and you're like, oh, okay. And you get into the feel. And that's the one thing I love about shooting. I don't care whether it's a bow or it's a firearm or, gosh, even a slingshot. For me, it's about the essence of what I'm doing. I like to say I have two happy places. The first one's on the firing line. The second one's on my bench. And when I'm shooting and I'm standing on that on that firing line, everything disappears to me. It's like I am in that moment. It's one of the very few times that my brain shuts down and I can concentrate on what I'm doing. And I love that. It's the feel of the trigger and knowing the mechanisms that's going on, and sometimes it's, hey, this could be better. This could, what if I did this? And then you get lost in your mind. But I totally get that.
Yeah. And to me, I don't compete. I mean, I guess I do sometimes, like on a low level, but not on the competition level. But I'm thinking, you said that you shoot competitively, or maybe I read that on your website. Do you still?
No.
Okay.
So one of the problems
go ahead.
I have is I have to balance out getting older with the indiscretion of youth, which is a kind of way of saying that. I mentioned I blew my shoulder out in high school. I've got 2 knee replacements coming up in my future. 2 herniated discs in my back. I'm just falling apart in my old age. So I just can't get out there and move around like I used to.
Yeah. What kind of competing were you doing?
So I was doing USPSA and 3-gun were my 2 competitions.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, I stopped shooting archery a long time ago. My shoulder was so loose I could grab my wrist and tighten up my shoulder and actually dislocate my shoulder.
Oh my
gosh! How loose it was.
That doesn't sound good.
No, that was knee boarding in the Susquehanna River in Maryland between my junior and senior year, and I won't confirm or deny that there was alcohol involved.
That'll get you in trouble.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure I'm past all statutes of limitations.
And so, I mean, with competition, with USPSA, remind me, is that with barricades and?
Yeah, you have barricades. It's kind of like IPSC. You just don't have the cover garment on.
Okay.
Yes, it's the basics of it. But I mean, you have your all the divisions are pretty much the same. But it's a pistol competition where you have your barricades. You're working around your barricades and shooting from kneeling, shooting from standing, shooting with 1 foot in the box as you're leaning around a barricade, and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, and why I ask is for the listeners, like it's a lot of movement, and especially when you said knees, I think of knees there because if you're moving from one station to the next and you have to stop without crossing over that board, that you have to lean out, like you need your hips and your knees and your ankles, like you definitely need to be in a little bit of condition for that if you want to actually win or place in a competition. If you obviously, when you're first starting out, you can go slowly and you want to make sure you're safe, obviously, but
one of the advantages I have is that they now have a seniors division that I'm getting closer to being able to shoot it.
Not all of us look forward to getting older, but maybe that's an instance.
Right? So, like for me with my knees, I have a daily physical therapy routine. I just can't run and I can't do the physical stuff that I used to enjoy doing. But I have this physical therapy routine, and then every couple of years I go back to readjust it because the knees are slowly getting worse. And so I have these things where I have to do like these side steps. And when I went through physical therapy, my therapist is going, well, what do you do recreationally? I go, I shoot. I'm a competitive shooter, and I'm trying to explain it to him. Then I pulled up on my phone. I showed a video of Jessica Hook shooting, and he's like, "Okay, I got this." And then we worked out that whole routine. And what's so funny is that doing this stuff is really boring, and I do a lot of dry fire. So I worked it out where I'm doing my side steps and I'm dry firing, practicing. And then when I went to go readjust for, my last physical therapy, he goes, all right, let's walk through your routine. And I start walking, and then I just naturally just pretend like I'm dry firing. He's like, what's
this about?
Yeah, what's this? I go, oh, yeah.
Present arms.
That's my dry fire. It's practicing with trigger pull and all that. He's like, oh, okay.
So it sounds like is your physical therapist pretty accepting of firearms and understanding of what you're doing?
Yeah, he is. The one advantage that I have is that through all of my injuries, I've chosen a certain path, and I go through the sports medicine path. My surgeon, he knows what I do, and he doesn't have a problem with it. The PA that I see that gives me knee injections, that gets me through SHOT Show, she understands what it is, and they're not gun people, and they admit they're not gun people. But again, I showed them what a competition looks like, and they understand it, because like my physical therapist, when I went in there and told him, and he showed Jessica Hook, and he's like, okay, we're going to run this, and this is a lot like this in baseball. These movements are a lot like this, and that's what they look at, is they look at the movements and go, okay, this is like this in another sport. And that's how they wrap their brain around what I need to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm thinking of like a shortstop, and you're practicing, side to side and stuff.
When I showed that, and that's exactly what he said. This is just like a shortstop.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So when I'm thinking about, so a lot of what I do is advocacy, and I try to educate, which is why the podcast came to be, is answering people's questions and educating. But when you have those interactions, are any of them ever curious where you can kind of advocate for firearms or give them a positive outlook?
I always try to push for a positive spin of firearms. When I originally started my channel, it was I wanted no politics involved with the channel. And it's funny when you say that until it happens to you. There was an incident where 5 congressmen they don't like my content, and they had it taken down. Some people know me through that. That's where I really started my journey as an advocate. But I always want people to feel comfortable. I understand that firearms are not for everybody. I get it. If you don't want it, that's fine. But don't mess up this sport and our rights because you don't want to practice that one, right? So it's always a conversation. The other advantage I have is I'm in Montana, so firearms are pretty well.
I used to say that I'm in Colorado, and you wouldn't believe what they did to us this week.
I know. I've been watching all about what's happening down there with the new laws that they're trying to pass. And what's so sad is that I moved here from the East Coast. This is becoming everything I've moved away from. It's slowly coming here, and it's killing me to watch this. But I like to gauge people when I'm talking about firearms. What can you handle? If I'm going to talk about stuff, what can you handle? As an FFL, I had a lot of first-time firearm owners come in, and one of the things I had with my shop is it was by appointment. So you had me for an hour. If you clearly did not know what you were doing, you were not leaving until I felt comfortable that you had, something to work on. And then say, you need to get additional training. It's the same thing with talking to people. If you're anti-gun, you're anti-firearm, okay, that's great. As long as we can have a discussion about this. I like to say that one of the problems we have is that we've lost respect. We've lost respect for a lot of things, including each other. As long as you can respect my point of view and I can respect your point of view, we can have a conversation of it. I may not sway you, you may not sway me, and that's fine. But as long as we can have a discussion, if you want to just start screaming at me, I'm going to walk away.
Right.
But no, a lot of my interactions have been very positive. There's people I deal with in my day job that are they don't believe in the same beliefs that I have, and I've had conversations with them, and it's okay. I if it's not for you, it's not for you. I'm fine with that. Just like I said, don't screw it up for everybody else.
Right. Yeah. And so with the Rogue Banshee, like what's your ultimate goal with it? What do you want to do with all of it?
So my ultimate goal is to get people. One of the problems I have in my profession is that when I think back 28 years ago, networks that I had built, computer networks I had built, they're gone within a couple of years. All of my work that I do is gone. It's been replaced by other work, or it's been replaced by somebody else, or whatever. I don't have anything to show, right? So if I build a firearm, or I maintain a firearm, or upgrade it, that's something physical. It's not going to go away. And I want people to kind of get back to how we used to do things. It's just we used to do things with our hands. We don't, and there's nothing wrong with making a living off of your mind. God knows that I do that all day long. But it's something where you can pass something down to another generation, or relearn a lost skill. And that's what I really want people to do. Is this stuff is not hard. You just need somewhere to go, and then just slowly start working into it. Have a hobby, something. I think of my childhood. We'd go out shooting, and then as a family, we sat at the kitchen table and cleaned all of our guns. And that's something we did as a family. Why can't that go into someone taking their son or daughter and going, "Hey, you know what? Let's this firearm doesn't shoot well. There's this new trigger. Let's put this new trigger in," and then see the results, and then just kind of build off of those old experiences that we seem to have lost.
Right. And that's something in several avenues where I have been, they don't want the children to be around guns, period. And I see it like you said, it's an opportunity, first of all, to have a positive interaction with your child around the table. You can also teach them the mechanisms, how something works, but teach them to respect that tool as well. And so
Yes.
there's a lot of opportunity that I see around just cleaning the gun. And it's kind of, to me, my dad taught me how to change the oil on my car. Like when I got a car, he's like, okay, you're going to learn how to take care of it. So I see that as something, to me. I also do in my personal life, there's a lot of sustainability, because that's the big thing in our culture is recycling and sustainability. But we want to take care of these things so that they last and they operate. And so I don't know, to me, that I just see that as a great opportunity that you're talking about right now. And you share that in your videos and in everything you produce?
Yeah, and a lot of my videos are technical, and it's very. We're going to disassemble this firearm. We're going
Hmm.
to reassemble this firearm. Where where I'm going now with the newer content, I'm still doing that stuff. Where I'm going with the newer content is more of it's project based. I know we're live, so I'm not going to do it. But I have a rifle sitting on the bench there that is a video. We're going to build this rifle. Like, this is the goal. Now let's do it. I was talking. I just filmed this last week of barreling that rifle. I'm showing how to barrel the rifle. There's a section in the middle that I still have to film there. I'm going to talk about the anti-seize that we use. Now, this is a stainless steel barrel and a stainless steel receiver. There's basically three types of anti-seize. It's copper based, aluminum based, or nickel based. Well, stainless steel, you don't want to use copper, because copper reacts with the stainless steel, the nickel in the stainless steel, and you could actually create corrosion long term. So you're going to want to use aluminum or nickel, and there's a difference between either one will work, but the nickel's better than the aluminum, and why? So there's that little bit of education in there.
Yeah, and
of,
I didn't know
you know,
that. I mean, that's a fun fact for today for me because I like stainless a lot, but I never knew you couldn't
well,
combine
and that's
them.
the thing is, like for you being outdoors, I would imagine a lot of your gear would be stainless
Hmm.
because it's out. I mean, you're not going out to the range, and then taking it back. You're out there, like if you're out hunting,
Hmm.
if it rains, it rains. You're there.
Right.
It's like not like you're just going to go. No, well, I'm done for the day. No, it's there. I mean, I remember that from when I was a kid, learning. When I learned how to hunt when it was in the Poconos, it was. I mean, it was waking up at midnight, and then we were driving 2 hours to get to the mountains, and then getting out to our spots and waiting for the sun to rise. And if it rained, we were done. We were there.
Right.
So yeah, I would imagine a lot of your gear was stainless.
Yeah. That is obviously why I like stainless so much. And so talking about that leads me to a question because like, I think of up here in the mountains, we go maybe on a 5-day trip, out there, you're just stuck out there. What are some suggestions you have if we're out hunting? Even I noticed down in Louisiana, we used to go to a duck hunt down there every September, and the guide down there, his gun was so rusted that it was incredible. But what are some suggestions? What do we do to prevent the moisture from wreaking havoc on our shotguns?
So it's funny. It's funny you say that because when I was a kid, cleaning guns when I was a kid versus cleaning guns now is so different. That I've learned not even just I've learned new techniques, but also there's new chemicals out there. And like I'm looking over at my bench over there, and I still have like a bottle of Hoppy's 9 that's probably been filled 4 or 5 times of the oil. I did a video a couple of years ago where up here in Montana we usually get a week or two where our high is still in the negatives,
Hmm.
and I took like little solo cups of different oils and I put it outside for a week and then brought it in. And I saw that Hoppy's the Hoppy's oil that had got me all through my childhood was frozen.
Hmm.
And then there's another oil that was kind of like a slushy, and then there's a couple of other oils that did not freeze. And I start looking at those oils. Okay, these oils didn't freeze. I start looking at the composition of them. We always talk about like oils where water floats on top of oil. You see that nice coloring, like okay, that's protection. I learned later that's not protection. That's actually the direct opposite. It's like oil and water. You see, oil floats to the top. You actually want the water to float on top of the oil because the oil, we always think oiling something drives it drives the water out. It does the direct opposite.
Oh,
It
wow.
traps the water in. So these newer lubes that are heavier than water actually helps you drive out the moisture and
Wow.
protect the guns more. I mean, these are just things that I've learned of playing with so many different. I mean, God, you can't throw a rock without hitting a new oil company out there now for a firearm. It's just doing that research of what does your oil do.
Can
Um,
you tell us what your
so,
favorite oil is? Do you have a
so
favorite
my
or?
favorite oil, I'll show you right here, is so this is actually out of Idaho. It's Aegis Gun Care.
Okay.
Um, this is one of the ones that is heavier than water, and it also bonds like at a molecular level to the metal. So
And
this is
that to me seems like what you would want. And it is for it to bond with the metal, which you
yeah.
said is pushing water out. And so I'm kind of over here kind of laughing to myself because when I teach kids about, hunting rifles and stuff, I always tell them you hate math and you hate geometry and trigonometry, but it's like a lot of this actually does have to do with firearms and shooting. And then this is obviously chemistry. Like,
Yeah.
so
Well,
maybe we should have paid more attention in class.
Well, it's funny because you think about it. Yeah, this is chemistry. When I was talking about doing trigger guards with or trigger jobs with the sear, that's geometry.
Hmm.
You're dealing with geometry at that point.
Yeah, that's how
So
you want that to come in at the correct angle, so
interface here, yeah,
it's not tensioning against itself, it's just
yeah.
gliding against. So yeah.
So it's funny because I hated. I mean, I remember as a kid, I hated math as a kid. Um, but that's like all I do anymore is math. And when you think about it, I'm a pistol. I like to say I'm a pistol guy that wants to be a rifle guy. And all my buddies that are rifle people kind of laugh at that because they come to me for the pistol stuff, and I kind of come to them for the rifle stuff. And then now it's like this particular rifle. It's got a 26-inch barrel. It's a 308. I'm going to see how far I can drive a 308 before I switch that barrel out to a 6.5 Creedmoor. Because now I'm starting to get interested in the longer range stuff, and now it's math again.
So you want a
And
lighter projectile going out
yeah,
there. Yeah.
and it's funny how that math always seems to creep back into our life. Before I
It
sat there and
does.
think, when am I ever going to use this? I'm doing it now.
Yeah, definitely. So you talking about rifle and handgun, and you mentioned you used to do 3-gun. What is your shotgun experience? Do you have any opinions on shotgun or anything like that?
I I'll admit, even though I do product reviews and stuff like that on the channel, I have biases. I knowingly have my biases.
Hmm.
My 3-gun shotgun is a Benelli M2. Absolutely love that shotgun. It's a great shotgun. My pistol was a little different now because I've come to not trust the pistol line because I bit to the P320 really hard when it first came out, and now I'm kind of questioning a little bit as we're seeing stuff come out about the P320 to the point where all of my P320s, and I have 6 of them, are grounded. And now I'm trying to figure out what my competition pistol would be because I'm still thinking about going back to competition. But I am very married to that Benelli M2. But sitting right next to my Benelli M2 is my Remington 870 Wingmaster, which was the first gun I ever had that was given to me
Hmm.
when I was a little kid. And I love my 870 too. So those are kind of my go-to shotguns. Sitting next to that is my father's Browning Auto 5, which was literally the first shotgun. That shotgun was the first shotgun I ever shot, which is
Hmm.
probably why I have a bad shoulder.
Yeah. Could be.
Shooting 12 gauge, not quite ready for that. But anyways, so those are my they're my go-tos. I was for 3-gun. I was going to go. I was looking at going into heavy metal division. Heavy metal because we usually shoot 9mm, 12 gauge, 12 gauge where you can do either pump or semi-auto, but you're going to go out with a semi-auto because you want to compete. And then you have your AR, your Benelli M2 or Stoeger 3Ks, things like that, and then a 9mm pistol. Heavy metal takes you out of that. It's going. Your rifle's going to be a 308. It's going to be an AR-10 platform. You cannot use a semi-auto. It's got to be a pump. And then your pistol's going to be a 45. So my 870 was going to start making a comeback as a 3-gun shotgun. And it's really fun when you take that gun out. That it's like I shot this as a kid. This is the gun I learned on, and now 40 years later, it's making a resurgence.
Making a return.
I did some Steel Challenge. Steel Challenge is a lot of fun. Where I shot rimfire irons, and I brought out the Smith & Wesson 41 that I learned. That's the pistol I learned how to shoot on, other than a Crossman, 6-shooter pellet gun. And it was fun just bringing that gun out. Like after 40 years of like being introduced to firearms on this gun, now competing with that gun, a 40-year-old gun, it's a lot of fun. But no, on shotguns, Benelli M2 is kind of my I love that shotgun.
Yeah. And what do you think it is about? And I'm going to ask you, what do you think it is about that Benelli that makes it the gun?
You know, I have yet to put my thought into that. I think it's the inertia system that they're running in it.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
I
thinking
specifically
about
ask you because I have Benelli Super Black Eagle 2s, and
okay,
I have a ton of shotguns because I'm an outdoor writer, so I get stuff to review.
right,
And I have a ton of shotguns, but I always go back to the Benelli. And to me, it leads back to what I was explaining earlier, like smooth for me.
yep,
And it's just the cycling of those. I don't, and
yeah.
to also
I
like you talked about cold temperatures, and the Benelli always cycles.
They just run.
Yeah.
They absolutely run. I have no problems with that Benelli with any temperature I've taken it out in, whether I'm running, just looking at my ammo shelf, you know, whether I'm running, you know, number 8 or number, you know, 7.5 shot, or if I grab my box of 1 ounce slugs, shotgun, that Benelli is going to cycle every single one of it. And my 1 ounce slugs, I actually cast those slugs and loaded that. Those things hit hard. I mean, a 1 ounce slug hits hard, but those things are loaded to the max. Um, and that shotgun just it eats it up no matter where I'm at. It just runs. And if you think about it, there's not a lot of people modifying those Benellis for any reason. I mean,
Mhm.
sure, there's some things where, you know, in 3-gun, which I haven't done to mine, we'll cut the loading port back a little bit so that way we can load a little faster. But even then, it's just you're not really going in there and polishing and doing a whole lot of work with them.
Mhm.
You know, those Benellis, you just kind of just bolt on whatever accessories you want and think it just runs. The only thing it doesn't like is side saddles. That inertia system will have a problem when you start putting side saddles with shotgun shells onto it.
Okay.
That's the only disadvantage I've seen with those Benellis.
Interesting. I think it's amazing. And so I'm also thinking, we talked a little bit about new gun owners and you spending time with them when you had your FFL. Do you see, like, if somebody's a new gun owner, I mean, obviously in the past 4 years, we've seen huge increases in gun owners. What are some things that, every new gun owner, like a commonality that you think everybody needs to know?
So this is going to sound counterintuitive, but number one, why do you want the gun? I don't care that you have a gun. I know why you want the gun and understand why you have that gun, and then take the appropriate training for that gun. You know, one of the things that scared me was going through COVID and all that stuff. We had that big influx of brand new firearm owners going, I want to protect myself. I'm going to buy a gun. The gun's the tool. You need the skill for the tool. And what scared me was they bought their gun, they got their token 1 box of ammo. They're going, I'm going to protect my family. No, totally a noble cause, but you need to learn how to use that firearm. So it's training, and I've taken a lot of new people out to the range. It's something even as a kid we just did. Being a firearm owner, we brought people who were not gun owners to the range to get them their first experience and getting that good first experience.
Right.
Because if you have a bad first experience, you're not going to do this. You know, I remember a buddy of mine. He wanted to buy his first gun and he wanted to be a Desert Eagle 50 caliber.
I love
I'm
those.
like, I love them.
I don't
I love
recommend
them.
it as a first gun.
Yeah, I love it too, but it wasn't going to be a good first gun, right? And so I took him out and taught him 22s. He goes like, I don't want to shoot 22s. I'm like, you've never shot a gun before. I'm paying for the range time. I'm paying for the ammo. I've got the guns. just have fun, right? So he shot, 22, and it's like, okay, that's kind of fun. I pulled out 357. He's like, I don't want to shoot a revolver. I'm like, again, you've never shot before. So we were shooting 38s. I'd shoot some 38s, he'd shoot some 38s, and go back and forth. And then I put 357s in, and then I set that 357 off. It was, what was that? I'm like, that's 357. And he goes, oh, I don't like that. I go, you want a 50?
Yeah, yeah, there you go.
You want a 50? You want to shoot 357? No. And then I did something that I really don't recommend people do, but I was young and stupid. I put in 538s and put his last round as a 357 on him.
Mm-hmm.
That 357 went off, and he was just like, yeah, I don't like that. Then we went to 9mm, and he settled on 9mm. But no, understand why you want that firearm, and then have the appropriate training for it, and make sure that you pick a good instructor for that first training, because if it goes bad, you're not going to want to go back.
Yeah. And I think we did an Empowered Women series this last winter, and I had a lot of different ladies on, and one of them in particular worked with new shooters, and they a big thing to me is like some of them don't even know how to load a magazine or what a magazine is. And so that's something for you as a listener, is look for somebody that is willing to teach you the basics and not going to demean you or look down on you if you're asking for help. Because, and as an instructor, you should never look down on somebody that wants help. It's like, be thankful that they're asking rather than just showing up out there with who knows what and doing who knows what, because they're learning from TV, and we know all the mistakes they make on TV or in the movies.
All wrong. Yeah, I know it. It drives me nuts watching this stuff. I think one of your you had Robin Sandoval on during those. So Robin was on my podcast, and amazing woman. But it's so funny. When I was talking about taking my wife out and teaching her how to shoot, she goes, "We need to undo all that training." She's like, yeah, I get it. But yeah, talking to her, you really do want to have someone who does train to go through that stuff.
Yeah.
When my wife runs into a problem, I can think of how I would go through it, but it's hard to disassociate myself from myself to work through that. And then I've seen a lot of spouse trainings at the range go bad too. Because the husband's they don't know how to check their ego.
I was just thinking that
this is a completely different situation. This is not the time to be macho. Drop the ego and teach them.
Right. And that's something I have a friend who's been trying to teach his girlfriend, and I was like, please just stop. Like Robin told you, I was like, please stop. Because, and actually, I mean, my husband and I, he taught me how to fly fish. We get along, but also he kind of knows, okay, now, like you said, step back. I'm just going to teach you right now. I'm not trying to prove anything. We're just trying to help, Right. But it is something with groups like A Girl and a Gun and several others. There's that basic level where you can get started, but then they have the opportunity to advance you all the way up to either competing or hunting or, like you said, what's your purpose? What do you want to do with this? Do you just want to have it in the safe at home for protection or in the nightstand or wherever you keep your firearm? And if so, then they're also going to remind you need to practice with it every now and then. So those groups are really good. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and that's why I love those organizations. It's funny, something from my childhood always comes back to me. My father died in the 90s, but I remember as a child growing up, he always said that women are going to be the future saviors of this sport. And it's so funny because his whole thought process is no politician's ever going to want to tell a woman that they can't protect themselves. He has got to be rolling in his grave right now with what happens in politics now, because the direct opposite. I mean, there was that stopped. But that's why those organizations are amazing. And, I think about my wife when we got our concealed carry permits in Montana. Her going out to get her first gun. This is before I was in FFL, and she goes, "Okay, I want to pick my gun, but I want to pick my gun. I don't want you." I'm like, "I'll be there. I'll just be looking at the rack. It's between you and the guy in the counter, right?" And eventually, she picked a gun that she liked to carry. I mean, she'd been shooting for a while, but her Beretta 92 was not going to be a great carry gun for her. She eventually settled on a gun that she liked, and then now she needed a holster. And the guy behind the counter actually said, "How about a shoulder holster?" And I remember looking down the counter going, "Are you stupid? You obviously don't understand the female anatomy. Shoulder holsters are very tough for women to have." And that's where, I like to say that story a lot. Like I told Robin about that story, and it's one of those things of, this is why we need organizations like A Girl and a Gun.
Mm-hmm.
Because who better to teach than the people who have the exact same body or needs. I think about one of my customers when I was in FFL. He's a right-handed shooter. He went to go teach his daughter how to hunt. His daughter's a lefty. So he went to go teach her how to shoot the rifle that he had just bought from me. And he couldn't do it because he couldn't figure out how to reverse everything.
Mm-hmm.
So he found an instructor who was left-handed. Find the people that are going to match your needs and let them teach you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's so important. We're fortunate. My daughter's left-handed also, but we had other guys who used to be wranglers for us that were left-handed. We had other lefties in our lives that were like, you could either do this or you can do this, and showed her different ways. And now she is an assistant hunter ed teacher with me, and she's able to show,
awesome.
And I'm able to show also because I've seen her, I'm like, well, my daughter does it this way, but our friend does it this way. And you kind of explain to them different options.
Yeah, it's amazing. That's going to be great for you, because now you got that mother-daughter plus teaching, the safety aspect and getting people into the sport. That's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. It is. So when we're chatting with you, is there anything else that you do that you think my audience would like to know about or wants to learn about?
The biggest thing when I talk to everybody about going into working in your firearms is really just, it's just getting over the fears, right? I mean, learning how to work on a firearm is a lot like learning how to shoot a firearm. You need to find the right people to show you. And that's a tough thing. That's really a tough thing to do. A lot of the content creators that, like me, who do gun builds that have been kind of banned off of YouTube, we got together and we have this thing called Freedom Crew University. And that's actually where we were, like, all of my content that got taken down is actually there. You can download it for like one of my videos for the P320, buy it for like $3 and own it. And it's yours. I've since created another class, but we do classes there. We have the YouTube videos type of content. I have some what I call CBTs, computer-based trainings, where I walk you through building an AR, or you could buy one of my videos. And we even have face-to-face, where if you want to pay, that we can get onto a video call and we can walk you through, virtually. I would say face-to-face, but virtually,
virtually
like
face-to-face, like we are now.
Virtually face, yeah. So that, just make sure you choose the right people to learn from. It doesn't matter whether you're working on a gun, you're learning how to shoot, you're learning how to drive. It all comes down to meeting the right people and following that. So that's my biggest message there is, do that. If you want to get involved, we have Freedom Crew University over there. That the forum is free to join. You can talk to other gun builders and learn things. my big pet peeve is when people don't respect. If you're on one of the boards that I run and there's a lack of respect there, I will actually ban you from the board, because this should be a safe place to ask questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so that sounds like it's. Is it Freedom? What's the website again?
freedomcrewuniversity.com.
Freedom Crew University. And so that sounds like a great place to kind of learn some things. And where else can they find you?
They can find me. The best place right now to find me is on my webpage, which is www.trb.fyi. That's like I said, I hit the delete button, and I'm slowly getting all the content back up there and then fixing things up. So now it's a little more friendly to find the content. You can contact me there. I'm on Instagram. Instagram, I wouldn't say I got banned from Instagram. Let's just say that Instagram and I had a little argument, and they locked me out of my account.
Oh gosh!
and I had to start all over again. The original account's still there, which is the Rogue Banshee. But that's the one I can't get into. But now I had to restart over. It's the Rogue Banshee Media on Instagram. Got a lifetime ban on TikTok.
I'm working on a lifetime ban on TikTok. It's tough over there.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
it's
You can be
there.
a naked woman and it's okay, but if I show the stock of a firearm, I have strikes. So
I had Diana Muller on, I guess about 9 months ago. She was on my podcast last, and we got talking. I go, the sad thing about some of the social media is that we can, I can show a gun and get a strike or a ban.
Mm-hmm.
But someone can post a picture out there where I could tell what their natural hair color is. And that's perfectly okay.
Yeah.
We've got some bad priorities going on.
Yeah. Yeah. My last one, we had a pheasant hunt about a month ago, and the video just had us walking in the field. But of course, there are shotguns over shoulders. And so that was my most recent strike. So I don't know. I'm like, nobody's shooting. Nobody's like.
So what gave me my final strike on TikTok that banned me was throwing knives.
Oh, wow. Oh, well, and now that you say that, I did a review on some Beretta knives that got me a strike also. And I just had them back here on the mantle. They were laying there, and I just panned across them. And that was one of my earlier strikes. That's been a while ago.
Mine was Smith & Wesson throwing knives, where I was throwing them into a board, trying to say, this stuff is harder than you think it is.
Mm-hmm.
Lifetime. Yeah, that's where I got my life. What's funny is I just waited about 6 months, and the name came available again, and I just re-registered the name under another phone number.
Okay.
But not a lot of content. It's mostly just to keep the name so somebody doesn't go out there and
take
screw
it
around.
Yeah. Interesting. Well,
but yeah.
It's a struggle, but I'm glad people are out there teaching and educating, and hopefully that people will find these other outlets where they can look for you and learn and be inspired. So I appreciate you being a guest on my show, and I'm glad to meet you. We could probably talk for hours because you know a ton. It's nice to meet you and get to know you and share you with my listeners.
Yeah, I absolutely appreciate coming on. Trust me, it's an honor of mine to be on your show and talk to you about firearms. It's fun. I see. For me, I kind of live vicariously through your content because I can't get to the outdoors anymore. And so it's like, well, at least somebody's out there still doing this stuff.
I try to get out there. I do a lot more farming and ranching than hunting right now. It's turkey season, and I haven't gotten out yet because I've been doing advocacy stuff also. So there you go.
We were driving last week. We were on a drive, and 2 turkeys were just running right along the dirt road there. I'm like, Okay.
Crazy turkeys, dang them.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you again. I really appreciate you being on the show. And for the listeners, we will include links in the show notes for you to find things we've discussed today. And hopefully you'll go and visit the Rogue Banshee as well.
Hey, this is Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, host of the Armed Lutheran Radio podcast, reminding you that the podcast you're listening to is a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. Check out all the great content at selfdefenseradio.net.